Good morning. It's Saturday morning, May 3rd, 2025. This is Rod Brown again. I added a market chart or modified a market chart, and I want to show you how you can use this. As always, remember the market is your teacher, and any stock, index, or ETF mentioned in this presentation is not a recommendation to buy or sell. All trading strategies are used at your own risk. Now this chart I'm showing is, I added this to my charts. It's under 6B. I have a similar chart, 6 and 6A, but I decided that I wanted the micro trend, the short-term trend, and the intermediate-term trend in here to help give us a better idea of where the markets stand at any time. Now, I'm going to click up here on the designer, and I'm working with this folder right here under my market analysis user groups. These are equal dollar weighted indexes, and these are the ones that I primarily look at. So I'm going to flip through to the warehouse views, and where I currently am, I'm in top-down process views for HGSI generated indexes, and I'm currently looking at demand supply, and you can see what the market did yesterday, the percent advancing and declining in all of these indexes. It was another strong day for the market, so there's a surprise jobs report. We'll see if there's any validity to that as time goes by, but it was enough to get buyers into the market, and it took off. Now I want to point out this column right here, days since the 3 crossed the 6 and days since the VPOC crossover. This happened 9 days ago. Z0 is always a crossover day. So these indexes have been moving up for quite some time based upon what I use. And if you've been listening to me, I use the 3-6 crossover exponential because it's responsive and it gives us an early idea of what's going on in the markets. Now, I'm going to look at the S&P 1500. It's the broadest market containing the S&P stocks, and let's just take a look at this, what I have on this chart. I'm going to bring up an arrow and point out some things here. Now, looking over here to the left, you can see that I've put the days since the 3 crossed the 6 in here, and the days since the 6 crossed the 18, and the days since the 18 crossed the 50. And this is still on the downside, which means the intermediate term trend is still down, but the short-term trend and the micro trend both crossed over, and these are the number of days where that occurred. Now I brought the crosshair up, and if I bring it over here, you can see that looking back over here, 9 days ago, the 3 crossed the 6. And if I count backwards, or if I move this up, you can see this was the first day where it crossed over right here, and that corresponds with the crossover here. So that was actually 9 days ago, this being the 0 crossover day, and the market's been moving up since. Now, before that, we had crossover days here. It was just chopping around. It didn't cross over on this big day where Trump said that he was going to postpone the tariffs, and a lot of people made or lost a lot of money on that day. But anyway, this is the current signal. And then looking at the intermediate term, this crossover on this day right here. So as always, the 3-6 crossover occurs first, but that's where you can start looking for potential trades. So looking at this, 8 days, and let's see what happened. It happened right here on this day. I'll bring this back up so you can see the green dot. On that day, that corresponds to a big up day, which generated a buy signal, because all of these indicators that I use, advancers versus decliners, were well above 5 to 1, as was the volume, and then the force index 13 and 2 and the volume point of control, plus the crossover. Now this was followed up with another potential buy signal here. The buy signal was on, but this is a confirmation here. The only thing is the advancers versus decliners didn't hit the 5-to-1 mark, but they hit the 3-to-1 mark, at least somewhere in between those two, and the market continued higher. Now let's go back to this day right here, which was 9 days ago, and now I'm going to go into my warehouse views. I'm going to change to the index group, and I'll just move up to the top-down percentage price change 1 day. And what I've done here is I've sorted on the days since the 3 crossed the 6. And remember, we're looking for the number, if you look over here to the left, the number 8, which would be 9 days. So as I scroll down this, and this is a long list of stocks in the S&P 1500, but these are stocks right here, beginning with this, that crossed over on that day. And you can see there are several of them as I scroll down the list. Now I should probably use a index which isn't quite as broad. In fact, let me just go to the S&P 500 and then scroll down. So these are the larger cap stocks. So everything above this number 8 here, these crossed over before. So these were the leading stocks. So I'll just click on Costco. And it says it crossed over 17 days ago. And here's where the crossover occurred on it. Now it's been choppy throughout this area here, but it's never really looked back and challenged this. So that was the crossover day here. Let's go down to Dollar Tree. This also crossed over 17 days ago, which would be right here. You can see the crossover, the 3 crossing the 6. And it too, on certain days, has been choppy, but it crossed over. So these stocks above the 8 or the 9-day crossover, these stocks were leading the market before this buy signal. Okay, I'm going to flip back to the chart. And the force index and the VPOC are up here, so you can see where the VPOC and the force index 2-day turned positive on this stock or any stock. But I wanted to bring this chart in or add to this chart because I think it's important to be able to see, in addition to this information up here on the indexes. And let me go back to the indexes. So with this buy and sell information up here based upon these indicators, we also see where the indexes stand as far as the 3 crossing the 6. Now let's go back here to this day right here. You can see that the 3 crossed down through the 6 on the S&P 500 on this date, and that day was 2/21 of February, Friday the 21st of February. On that day, at the same time, you can see there was a moderate sell signal on here. These two didn't get up to the high volume numbers above 5, but they were between 3 and 5, and that signaled a buy on the same day that the 3 crossed the 6 going down, and it clearly shows here on the histogram. As far as the intermediate term, looks like this happened 2 days later as the market was going down. Now this chart certainly is not infallible. I know that because you can see that there are buy and sell signals here, but it certainly also gives an idea of the breadth of a move and the force of a move. With the addition of the histograms down here, we can see the crossovers and how much selling pressure there was when these lines spike down like this. It just shows the expansion to the downside of the index. Now compare this selling pressure to this selling pressure on these other areas here. slight selling pressure, slight selling pressure, slight selling pressure, moderate to heavy, and extreme selling pressure here. All this does is represent how far apart the 3 and the 6 are. The 6 is red, the 3 is green. The other red is a 200-day. I just left it that color. But this tells us the extent of the selling pressure based upon the histogram. So where are we right now? We're in a micro trend up, which occurred 9 days ago. Let's see. That was actually 8 days ago on the S&P 500. I'm on the S&P 500. If I go back to 1500, it was 9 days ago. This is number 8 over here, and 0 is the crossover day. Now back to the 500, 7 days ago. So that probably tells me, and I'm just guessing, that the small caps were leading more because this is 8 days right here. So as far as the S&P 500, the SPX, which everybody pays attention to, where are we right now? We're in a micro trend up, a short-term trend up, but the intermediate term trend has not turned up. Looking over here at this box, I'll get on the last day here. I'm going to bring an arrow up. I'll clear these other arrows out. The EMA fan is neither up nor down yet. But this information here shows that there were 457 advancers yesterday and 45 decliner, with the advancers a 10-to-1 positive day. So a very strong day on advancers versus decliners. But notice that the volume was not up. Now the VPA trends, short and medium term trends, are up, which corresponds to these histograms over here. Now what I take away from this is that we can, I need to get out of this arrow, we can use these indexes and the days since a crossover as signals, and you can see these have all crossed over several days ago, and whether we see them on days positive or days negative to the downside, and everything's positive now, of course, then we can go top down and look for stocks within these indexes that are crossing over either up or down on the same day. And then we can also see the stocks that are positive, that have been either positive or negative longer, to get a feel for what's leading the markets either up or down. Just remember, you have to use the HGSI indexes with this. Now I use these down here because I make sure they're updated frequently, every week, because stocks do come and go, and it takes a little longer for these up here to be updated. So these are the most current indexes. You have to be a member of the Insider Club to have access to this, but it keeps you up to date, let me put it that way. Okay, I'm going to show you something else that I added this week, and I'm going to I'll just go to all securities and hold the alternate spacebar to get to all securities, and then under the quick pick, if you go to down here to the category trades, I don't have intraday information today, but I have end of day in this folder and this folder. Here's the end of day, here's the intraday, has the same scans in it. Now I'm going to open this up and click on this. This is the end of day relative strength to the S&P sectors, and you can see yesterday that based on the combo sort, the financial sectors did the best. Now looking down here at this, remember I pointed out that the sectors or the stocks crossed over 8 days ago on the S&P 1500 and 7 days ago on the S&P 500. And look at this, the spider crossed over 7 days ago also, so that corresponds exactly with the S&P 500. Now what I've done is I've added a few more scans here. This one was in here, the end of day relative strength to the S&P 500. And let me bring this up here, make it a little larger. But I've added the end of day RS to the S&P 500 market leaders. These are stocks whose fan is up, and these are leading mostly high relative strength stocks. And I'm sorted on raw combo, which brings the strength to the top. Let's just bring PLNTR up, and I can get out of this chart because I don't need the internal information anymore. And I'll just go to my black charts here, and I'll use the 3-6 momentum chart here. And you can see that the crossover on this happened clear back here. Well, actually, I'm going to bring that chart back up because I want the days since the crossover. Better yet, I'll just pause and add that information to this box. Okay, so this chart will be included in the download. I just modified it, and this tells me that PLTR crossed over 17 days ago, which would be right here. You can see the crossover. Had a big day here and then a slight pullback, and then buyers really stepped in with an effort to rise and high volume strength seen returning after a downtrend. And it really hasn't looked back since then. And you can see the 3 is well above the 6, which gives us a high histogram on the micro trend. Now I've got these in a different order here. I wanted the 3 to be able to move that up so I could see the crossover, but you can see the pocket pivot volume here, and the short-term trend turned positive here, intermediate term here turned positive here, and it's been moving up. Now this is the group going up, but the 17 days, 0 being the crossover date, tells me this is one of the leading stocks in the group. Now looking down this list, you can see what the crossover days were. Now there are some here that have pulled back, days down. Coca could be a buying opportunity because there is a low volume test, but the crossover to the downside happened right here. It didn't cross over here, crossed down here actually, didn't get back above it, but it looks like it's holding strong here. Here's a strength seen returning, and then a low volume test. If this market holds together, this might be an opportunity with this stock. But I put a lot of emphasis on the days since the crossover because you can see when the groups or the stocks are starting to move within the group. And let's look for that. I need to reapply the filter here. There we go. Let's look for that crossover. All of these stocks crossed over on the day. Actually, this S&P crossed over here, so these crossed over a day before. These were leading a little bit, but this happened on the crossover day that corresponds to the index. These are pulling back here. They're still a leading stock. What's a leading stock? Well, the way I've got this set up, I have some couple of user groups here. These stocks have to be within 5% of their 52-week high, and they're within the S&P 500. Now, the other thing I did here is I put a scan which is the end of day relative strength of the S&P 500, and these have a bullish VPA flag. If you look down this column right here, you'll see what the flags are. And then the next one, these are bearish scans, this column right here. Certainly doesn't mean they're going to go down. Most stocks trade with the direction of the market. You already know that. And so I would be looking more at the bullish side here in these S&P 500 stocks. Now I did one more thing here. And remember, these are all so in the intraday. I did the same thing with the QQQs. Stock market leaders. These are all QQQ stocks. You can see there's only 14 of them. And these are ones having bullish VPA signals, and these are having bearish VPA signals. Once again, you don't want to fight the direction of the market. Look at the days since a crossover on here. Some of these were, well, Netflix. I mean, here's the obvious leader in the market. Here's where the crossover occurred right here on the earnings news, and it hasn't looked back. Actually, the earnings was here. This is a crossover here. Anyway, those are some things that I put in just to help us get to the information faster. Now you're going to have to download and install the add-on to get these latest views. But anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. The market's in a bullish mood right now, and we'll see if it can continue.